Dear members of the Assembly, it is a true honor for me to welcome you here. Today, we would like to discuss the issues that are the most urgent right now, particularly for the state service, for ethnical affairs, and the freedom of conscience. Those are the issues that are related to the church relations, the issues related to the implementation of the law on the freedom of conscience, the law on the constitutional affairs in terms of the religious organization functioning, and the affairs that are related to giving to the religious communities the good conditions for showing up their feelings and for the implementation of their mission. Those issues that are also related to the protection of the rights of the minorities and indigenous people. And in the long run, there's also the issues that are related to our obligations that Ukraine has taken on itself in order to join the European Union. To cut the long story short, we have got quite a wide number of issues that we need to discuss, not only in our circle, let's say so, but also among the scientists, the practitioners who are working on those issues for many, many years. Those are really famous for us through their monographs, through their publications, through their speeches at the conferences. And despite the fact that we are saying that the scientific activity and the political practices are two different things, I'm truly confident that in this case, we will be able to gain the synergy. We know that, and we remember that all of the meetings, all of the conferences, and the parts of the everyday life is possible only to the fact that our warriors, male and female, are defending us from the enemy. And that is why, unfortunately, many of them has given their life for that. Therefore, I do suggest to give a minute of honor, minute of silence to honor them. Thank you. Given the fact that we have got a really practical meeting, the first panel discussion is not really, welcoming, but is the one that will provide an impetus and the framework for our discussions today. And therefore, I would like to give the floor to the member of the Parliament of Ukraine, the member of the Committee on Culture of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and the member of the Committee on Non-Discrimination, also within the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, the Deputy Chair of the Committee on Humanitarian Policy and Information Policy of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. I guess I will stop saying all of the titles. Yevgenia Kravchuk, the floor is yours. Greetings, colleagues. Thank you, Victor. Thank you for the invitation. I will definitely say that it is really interesting to get to know the results of the discussion because it is really practical in the context of both of the topics and very interesting, narrow topics. Also, I've seen them on the agenda. Those that also have found its realization in the drafts of the laws that has been done by my committee. First of all, I would like to know that our committee on humanitarian policy, it used to be there for quite many years, but starting from 2025, also have got the vice premier minister. That is all. I think it is really important. It's one of the things that the state service for the ethnical policy or ethnical affairs, because afterwards, after the reform has been done, after the ministry has appeared to be shorter than it used to be, and when we didn't see the minister in the list that used to be in the central national authorities of Ukraine, and we do believe that Ms. Berish now is going to be our additional advocate for different affairs that has been taken by the cabinet of ministers of Ukraine, and of course those that are also adopt in our discussion rooms, and it should be the cooperation of all authorities, both the legislative and executive. With regard to the work of our committee on the topics that you will be discussing today, well, of course, the law on the constitutional affairs and religion, it is really important. It's a national security issue. We believe that it's quite an achievement of our committee. And we are ready to also implement additional decisions if you will come up to those during the discussion, if they are needed. We are ready with our committee to continue working on that so that all of the ideas, all of the tasks that used to be given by the legislators, that they will be implemented in real life. And I also would like to note within this topic that the Confederation will, in here, you will probably say quite a lot about that, but this is what I've seen in the news. The Confederation of European Churches, they didn't have it quite in a, not a resolution, but a common announcement about the ideology of so-called Russian world. And this ideology in our legal act, or the draft of the legal act, we also noted that it's one related to the hate towards humanity that has got nothing to do with the love towards the towards other people, and also to religious fundamentals. Also, within the Parliamentary Assembly that has been noted in here, based well on the level of the resolution, we did make it to say that the Russian world or peace and the Russian Orthodox Church, this is not something that we should protect because it is not related to the human rights, because it does call for the genocide of Ukrainian people, and it therefore has nothing to do with the love to people, to other people. With regard to the diversity of the people in Ukraine, you probably were monitoring the discussions that has been ongoing with regard to the languages that the state of Ukraine has taken obligations to itself in terms of the ratification of the legislation, the European legislation on language protection. We did take this decision, thank you to the cabinet of ministers, and we know that all of the people were also involved in that. Well, we were in between the change of the prime ministers, therefore we had to submit it twice. I would like to thank everyone who has joined the discussion within the committee, because in our committee we did make this list wider. And after it will be signed by the president of Ukraine, Ukraine will protect 18 languages. This is one of the highest indicators among the countries who also signed and ratified the chart and the languages. I also would like to underline not the lack of Russian languages. I think it doesn't need any reflections on that or any explanations. However, the languages of the indigenous people, not only the Crimean Tatars, but also Krimchaks and Karaim. Of course, the levels of protection are quite different. However, I also would like to underline that we added, and it was quite a conscious decision. I would like to thank everyone who joined this on the not Azovian Greeks languages. I've seen that you also have got it in the agenda and the documents. We have got the new Greek and the Rus and the Romanian. Therefore, I would like to thank Viktor Yevhanovich for this initiative that we also added the language of Rome. So we have done quite a big work on that. And so between the languages of the European Union, we also added up the Czech language, and we also had this conversation between the beginning that even we had the event with the Czech national minority. Therefore, I would like to thank you all for working on this field. All of the topics that the state service is working on are really important because it is telling us about what we are filled in as people, as human beings. Without it, we would be, something hollow inside. But with those topics, we're talking about our conscious, also about our European integration. We will hear from our colleagues from the European Commission here today. And I also would like to state that our committee is taking part in all working groups. We are also included in the on the first cluster. We are also included in the group that is conducting negotiations on behalf of Ukraine. And the first cluster is one of the most important clusters because the other clusters are not going to work without it, and therefore, without implementing it, there will be no practical European integration. However, at the same time, all of those issues also need the discussion, inclusion, and our committee is ready to continue being the space for all of you to speak and for legislators to do their work and then to implement this policy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now we have got this common framework for our discussion, and with the regard of the Vice Premier Minister of Ukraine and the Minister of Culture, she has conducted on Saturday the strategic session for us, and now we are, we have got all the weapon in terms of knowledge, the new practices, and we are rushing to implement them. I would like to give the floor to our European colleagues. We have got the coordinator for the dialogue with churches, religious, philosophical organizations of the European Commission, Mr. Vincent Dupin, and Robert Rehak, our reliable friend, who is the ambassador and the special envoy for interfaith dialogue, freedom of religion of Czech Republic, and their attention towards Ukraine, to the freedom of conscience in Ukraine, to how the policy of protecting the rights of national minorities and indigenous people is implemented is truly valuable for us, and therefore it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Vincent Dupin. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Дякую вам дуже. Для мене сьогодні честь бути з вами, бути, на жаль, не особисто, але я сподіваюся, що я все ж таки можу додати також таку широку рамкову ідею на діалог стосовно релігії та роботи між релігійними організаціями, етнічними організаціями, щоб ми могли про це говорити також достатньо широко. І я не хочу занадто поринати в історію. Мені здається, що для нас важливо розуміти, що сьогодні є близький зв'язок між цивільним та релігійним миром. Якщо ви подивитеся на ті віри, які є в Європі, дуже багато
17th, 16th century, so some time ago, but we still have this heritage of war and how religion could bring or can bring peace and is an element of a civil peace. And I think that's something important to bear in mind, that there can be this contribution by religion to peace. First, it's for me important to acknowledge the difficult context you are facing, and that we all know the Russian aggression against Ukraine, and in particular the hybrid nature of this aggression, which we can also feel in the western part of Europe in a, of course, very different way, and that the hybrid nature of the war means also that elements concerning people's life and, for example, religion is also used, is instrumentalized in this context, and that's something, of course, we are fully aware of, and I'll come back briefly to it towards the end. I think to describe the legal framework at European level, I mean the main principles. First of all, some part of our basic values are fundamental rights, human rights for all, together with democracy and rule of law. You're aware of that. I mean that's part of the negotiation we are having together on accession. And one of the elements of human rights, and it's a historical element, as I was mentioning, is the freedom of religion or belief, which is historically the idea of religious tolerance, of ensuring that each person and each community has its own religious freedoms, is really an important part of our history and of our values. And the important thing to note, I mean, I will not go into details on the jurisprudence on freedom of religion or belief. Ukraine is party to the European Convention on Human Rights, which is a critical element. I mean, in our European legal framework, we have our own Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which is legally binding, which is part of the European treaties. And in many ways, the Charter of Fundamental Rights is a reflection of the European Convention on Human Rights. So the jurisprudence of the court in Strasbourg, of the European Court of Human Rights, and of the court in Luxembourg, the Court of Justice of the European Union, are very close. I mean, there might be some differences, but on freedom on basic principles such as freedom of religion or belief, I think the jurisprudence of our court in Strasbourg is really critical. And this is really the basis. I mean, when it comes to assessing the legal framework of any member state, this is really a starting point, is to look at the jurisprudence of the court, of the European Court of Human Rights. And I think what is very important in the case of freedom of religion, like some other right freedoms, like freedom of association, freedom of expression, it is both individual, so you have the individual right to freedom of religion, but also collective. So it also protects the autonomy of religious organizations in religious matters, of course. And there is a distinction that also the Court of Justice of the European Union makes between the commercial dimension and the religious dimension of some of the activities of our religious organizations, which sometimes are involved in social services, in trade services. So there are a variety of activities carried out by religious organizations. And it's very clear that you have to make the distinction between the religious work, the religious dimension, which is protected, which receive a special protection, and other activities which are more between brackets secular activities you carry out with lay people in the normal world. I would say. So I think that's really one of the important aspects is the protection of religious communities and their institutions. Another important element when it comes to the religious dimension is the Article 17 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which is an article which is essentially recognizing the plurality and the pluralism across the European Union. And it's really also an old principle that in the European Union, the European system, we respect the autonomy of each state. We are not going to tell each member state how to organize religion. We have very different models across Europe. My own country, France, has a very secular and secularist model, but other countries have established churches. Some countries have multiple churches and multiple recognition. So there are very different type of models, and we respect this diversity across Europe. And I think we respect the fact that each member state has its autonomy, and I think that it is recognized by the courts that there is a margin of appreciation when setting up the system through which you recognize religious entities. At the same time, this Article 17 is also establishing an important element, which is a regular dialogue that we have at European Union level. So it's only an obligation for European institutions with religious leaders and what we call philosophical non-confessional organization. So the humanists, the Freemasons, so this type of organization are also recognized at European level, and we have regular dialogue with both the religious and non-confessional element. And we have yearly meetings with religious leaders in Brussels. And it's a very important element that we have this regular encounter, which happens regardless of the situation. So in good times or in bad times, we have these meetings, and I think they are very useful to take stock of the situation of our policies and also of the problems facing the different religious communities across Europe. We had, as an example, I wanted to mention one discussion after the invasion of Russia of Ukraine. We had a dialogue with religious leaders on the situation in Ukraine, where we had leaders from the different Christian traditions, Orthodox, Protestant, Catholic, also Jewish and Muslim leaders were present around the table. And there was a clear consensus, even, from all churches, all religious leaders, to condemn the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and also to support the European Union position in the conflict. So there was really a broad consensus, and that's important probably to have this support from religious leaders. And another element was also that the religious organization explained the type of work, the humanitarian work and the concrete work they could do on the ground. And some organizations, like the Conference of European Churches, have also explained the work they were aiming at doing, which is called Pathways to Peace, to engage with different religious and academic leaders to find, as is mentioned in the project, ways to peace, or how to engage at local level or at different levels on ways to look at the future peace. Of course, this is still far away in the future, but this, in our view, is a valuable work. The interface dimension, the role that religious communities could play in the future, hopefully peace, or at least situation where there can be ways to look at reconciliation and at a way forward for communities in Ukraine. I would like to stop here. I will not go longer on this. I'll be happy to answer questions and, of course, to continue working with you. On in the future, if there are questions or specific comments, And if I can be of help, of course, with my colleagues at the European Commission dealing with Ukraine, I'm really happy to be of help or assistance in any way. Thank you very much.
Depang, he has noted practically all of those issues that we will be talking about today in details, and those that we will have to stop on um, more thoroughly and different aspects. It is very important to get the welcoming word like that to our first panel. And right now, it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Robert Rihart, who we know really, really well, who is a big friend of Ukraine, who is very often also presenting at our forums. His participation was really important in the praying breakfast this year. And in general, his overall activity on religious freedom, not only in Europe, but in the whole world. And also his work towards preventing, stopping this freedom to be there on the occupied territories, and all of the efforts that Russia is doing there. Robert?
Szanowni друзі,
Dear friends,
thank you, Dr. Viktor Jelensky, for your kind invitation. And please let me thank to the State Service of Ukraine for Ethnic Affairs and Freedom of Conscience for organizing this event, highlighting the basic right of people to practice their belief without fear. I speak to you today as a chair of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, so-called the Article 18 Alliance, which brings together 43 countries around the globe. And I have said this repeatedly, publicly and clearly, our support for Ukraine will not weaken and will not stop as long as Russian aggression continues. At the same time, please let me assure you that this aggression will end, and I hope it will be soon. As we can learn from history, it will end just as all previous wars and similar acts of aggression have ended. If you allow me a brief philosophical reflection, my own, when one commits evil, he harms himself the most. Please also allow me a short joke, žart, from the communist era in our country. Can I have it? The communist apparatchik asks his colleague, Comrade Levinstein, why didn't you attend the last meeting of our Communist Party? And Levinstein answers, oh, I sincerely apologize. If I had known it was the last one, I certainly would have come. As we can see, Russia is descending into a moral and economic abyss, and sooner or later it must collapse. Systems built on hatred, violence, and manipulation of truth cannot endure forever. As our late President Václav Havel said during our Velvet Revolution, truth and love must prevail over lies and hatred. I highly admire you, Ukrainian people. You showed determination, resilience, and the capacity for invention. Thanks to you, Ukraine has become one of the most experienced and efficient armed forces in Europe, operating under the harshest conditions and using the most sophisticated fighting methods and weapons. We have to also learn from you the way how your belief and religion give you moral strength and resilience. Be sure that behind you stand many international partners, including the Article 18 Alliance. And it is essential that in the international arena, we continue to speak clearly about the real suffering experienced by believers in Ukraine and in the temporarily occupied territories. This is why international alliances matter. They help us keep attention on victims, resist propaganda, and defend freedom of religion or belief as a cornerstone of human dignity, especially in the times of war. Since the beginning of Russian aggression, around 70 priests, pastors, clergymen have been killed. More than 700 churches and places of worship have been destroyed by Russians. In the occupied territories, religious life that is not subordinated to Moscow has been systematically eliminated. Churches are seized, clergy persecuted, believers intimidated. While ordinary people are running to shelters, families are being torn apart, and many are fighting on the front lines. A painful contrast emerges. Instead of calling for just peace, the highest representative of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, has repeatedly described this war as a holy war and Putin's regime as a miracle of God. That's a clear misuse of religion. As someone once said, Patriarch Gundayev believes in Putin, he should believe in God. In my personal view, those who misuse religion describe an aggression in which innocent people are killed as a holy war or presented as a path to salvation will one day face divine judgment. Szanowni друзі, the Article 18 Alliance stands with Ukraine, and we will continue to stand with Ukraine until the very last day of Russian aggression. Thank you. Дякую.
Дозвольте мені подякувати.
Ongoing support of Ukraine for his analysis of the situation, for his jokes. In all of his presentations and speeches, he's saying that he's Czech, and this means that he's a person with a good sense of humor. Therefore, I would like to remind to Mr. Rihak one more joke from this series. Well, and for us, of course. At the beginning of the 1950s, well, this part is not a joke, it is a real story. In Warsaw, there was a festival of youth and students, and the Belgian queen, who was supposed, like everybody believed that she was quite red queen. She loved to meet with Khrushchev, with Mao Zedong. She has come to this festival in Warsaw, and as she was a really important person, the royal representative, she has been presented to the representatives of the Polish parliament and the cabinet of ministers, and she has heard that Poles are really religious, and she decided to go to this service. The prime minister said, "I will accompany you." And she said, "Oh, are you Catholic?" And he said, "Yes, I'm Catholic. Well, I'm not, practicing religion, but I'm Catholic." And she is asking, "How is it possible? You're a communist. How can you be a Catholic?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm a communist. I'm, practicing, but I'm not diminishing myself." Therefore, once again, before giving the floor to the first panelist today, I would like to say, or to provide a small framework for one issue that we believe is probably obvious, but we never talk about it due to that fact. You know, at the end of the 1980s, we had a visitor, a sociologist, the professor from Germany, and he said that, you know, my analysis, it does confirm that if in Europe, well, sometime after a long stop of the religious wars, there will be one more religious war. It will be in Ukraine. At this period, the situation looked quite chaotic, and it looked that Ukraine is a company of different views on religious issues. At this period of time, the most forbidden religious community, the Greek Catholics of Ukraine, they have come up to start working. The Orthodox, well, they received it without enthusiasm, let's say so. And the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church was really surprised that in Galicia, where before the Second World War, there were just a few Orthodox communities, then at this period of time, they've got quite a consolidated and numerous Orthodox community. They have started a conflict that has covered 1,500 different territorial communities. At the same time, we had another religious conflict when part of the Orthodox said that Moscow is not the mother of religion, and the other part said, well, no, we continue to stay in with Moscow. Then we also had the Protestants who believed that whenever they say the word and it's they say it up front at the stadium, it will turn the million of Ukrainians towards the Protestant movement. In the long run, the situation looked quite chaotic at that time. There were lots of different views on the same issues, and also the Krishnaites came up out of the internal catacombs, let's say. So different religious movements. Also, we had this White Brotherhood, and this was, you know, this big number of threats thrown together. And then it appeared that religious organizations, if they haven't learned to live together, then at least they understood that they will not be able to break this pluralistic picture that has been created on the religious map of Ukraine. And they have started making some rules of game. And we know that with all of the indicators of religious freedom, Ukraine has been not only much better than its neighbors from the post-Soviet occupation. Well, if we do not take the Baltic states in this regard, probably. However, if we compare also to some Western democracies, Western European democracies, in Ukraine, we didn't have any state, official churches, all religions were equal on the legislative field. We also had quite a unique organization, and all Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, each and every church had its sector of public support, and this led to the fact that none of the churches or organizations could suppress other religions. And this once again led to those high standards in the field of religious freedom. The same goes to the fact that Ukraine successfully avoided the conflicts on religious based on religion. We didn't have such conflicts as, for instance, our neighbors in Central European part, and this situation, which we should value. We should value it quite a lot, and also we shouldn't forget about those serious issues that exist in terms of the interconfessions or interconfessional relations, and those that sometimes appear on the international or the ethnical affairs. So we can say that the practical thing is, it's a good theory. We will discuss it today. We will discuss both theoretical speeches and also the best practices that are there in the world. Therefore, it is my pleasure to give the floor to our first panel that will be discussing the issues of the relations on the religious background, also regarding the law on the protection of the constitution, and it will be moderated by the first deputy chairman of the state service, Victor Leonolovich. Dear colleagues, I kindly invite the participants of the first panel to come up here so that everybody can hear us, see us. Dear participants of our event, I also would like to note a little bit about logistics, at least for the first half, while moderating the panel, while inviting our speakers, our panelists, our participants. Once again, just continuing the logics of Victor, I would like to focus on making some conclusions with regard to critical notes that we have received of the roundtable on our discussions on the recommendations given to the law on the protection of the constitution, because I think that this problem, this issue is the most burning today. It raises up lots of discussions, lots of sometimes people even accuse others in terms of the practice towards the violation of the freedom of conscience. And it is really important for us to be clear on that. And also with regard to the hopes towards the first panel, I would like to have some retrospective or, just the first notes of what has been happening in Ukraine and how the Ukrainian church, given the change of the situation, had to reform, had to change its forms, its methods to adapt to those challenges that has been demonstrated by the latest events. And of course, as we have got the element of the state in here, how the state has been reacting, how the state in those, classical triangle, did it play some role? Didn't it play some role that it should be playing in this consolidated position of Ukrainian society, of Ukrainian churches? Therefore, the first panel will be given to this conversation. And I would like to introduce our panelists of our first panel, Mr. Hennady Hristokin, Tetana Kalinichenko, also my colleagues that will be in the third panel that will be telling us about the activity of the state and our state service in the context of all the issues that I have raised. Therefore, it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Hennady Christokin. The PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy, the professor in the Kiev Aviation Institute State University. Thank you. Thank you for your invitation. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends. We have got a really important guest today, and being the first to speak at the panel is a big honor for me. I would like to touch upon the important topic today, the important issue, how the Russian aggression has implemented the transformation processes within the religious practices in Ukrainian religious organizations. What trends we have gotten here, what main changes have happened in this regard, particularly for the religious organizations in Ukrainian churches. And it seems to me that it's really important, that will help us to see, to understand what is really happening, what not only just changes are happening there, but what challenges we are facing that we need to react to. Therefore, we will start that really, in fact, we are right now looking at the historical unprecedented situation when on our eyes drastically, maybe, when in the terms of evolution, the religious practices are changing. They are transforming right now, right here. And we could see this transformation starting from 2014 after the Maidan. We could see how the religion has transformed, how the rhetorics, the practices have changed. However, the most powerful changes have touched upon starting from the full-scale invasion of Russian Federation. In terms of religion, if we just, frame those changes, the religious affection from its own niche, where it has been for quite a long period of time, it has been captivated by the social context. It came up to the public affairs. It actually appeared to be a phenomenon of political scale, both political and moral, and also spiritual. All of those things have led to the fact that religion organizations, Ukrainian churches, they became a very powerful, they have got their own transformation, but at the same time, they also became the transformation engine that has influenced the other processes, really powerful processes in social practices, in the society, in religious organizations, in all of the aspects. As I have noted, it has started in 2014. At this period of time, we have seen this reorientation of the Ukrainian religious sphere that used to look at Russian culture. Let's be honest, it's about some on Russian religion and some Russian patterns. However, at this period of time, we have made this movement, a very important movement. It wasn't quite, it didn't cover lots of people, but it was quite noted. For some important churches, their community engagement, their social activity, it has influenced the fact that the language has been changed. Lots of people started serving in Ukrainian. We could see that then we have started talking about judgment towards evil, towards aggression. That has starting from 2014. But once again, let's be frank and honest, up to 2022, those processes were quite slow. They couldn't be called radical. They were kind of thriving. They were providing these fundamentals. And then starting from the February 2022, we had this cardinal change, drastic change, not in terms of just quantity, but also the quality transformation. I truly beg your pardon. I would like to talk about those changes that has happened in the religious activity of Ukrainian churches. First, we had the change from the ritual religiousness towards divine influence existence. Before that, all Ukrainian churches, they used to be quite neutral. They were a little bit far away from the society. They had to formulate and interpret the doctrines, the ideas, the sacred texts that were not so linked to the experience of war, of death, and the mass genocide. Starting from that, and this is the first transformation line, the religiousness in Ukraine has been changing. It appeared to be the factor of survival of the nation. This is a really essential thing that we have been looking at starting from 2022. We also had to formulate the response in terms of worship to say not only how to survive for one single person, but how the nation, how the people should survive, how the state should survive, how to talk to people under occupation, how to talk to the people coming back from the capture, how to explain, and how to find the instruments, the tools that will help them to explain everything, the theological tools to use to keep the worship, to keep the sermon, and also not to fall into the propaganda. So this change of the sermon, the trial to provide the answers to those things that's considered to be quite, philosophical, but right now they appear to be existential, how the church should act in the terms of the full-scale invasion. What is the function of the church? And almost all religious organizations, as we can see, they have changed their theological rhetorics and starting talking about the dignity, about the protection, about the security. This was their response towards the traumas that society has been going through after Bucha, after Mariupol, after Izum, and so on and so forth. Also, one more important transformational line would be the change of the social function of the religion. Even before that, Ukrainian churches used to have some social line, but it used to be this charitable function. It used to be kind of an add-on to the main religious activity. However, right now, we started serving the God through serving the community, through serving to the person. And if before that, the main paradigm of the activity of the church used to be based on the church, the building, the rituals, and my own personal beliefs, now this transformation has moved towards the other format. So first community, first service, and responsible attitude to your own calling. So this function also has changed when, in fact, the religion becomes the one who's making the outcome. When we had to take the people out, when we had to organize the hospitals, when we had to organize the volunteering centers, the hubs, and so on. The fourth very important peculiarity is the public voice of the religion. In fact, starting from the 2022, the clergy, they started publicly speaking on the issues that they didn't talk about at the beginning. Religion is now not avoiding the politics. It is not related to the political parties. It is not providing some political messages or protecting some political interests. But here it's an important change. The moral becomes political, and then political becomes moral. So this limit between the political issues and moral issues has changed. In fact, one more really important transformational process would be the change, the shift in the language and the symbols. And we're not talking about only about the use of Ukrainian language that has appeared to be quite popular. We're not talking about the fact that many of the priests that used to use Russian language, they started serving in Ukraine, and it was really important to see the solidarity. However, the issue is that the space for religion and sacral issues, earlier it used to be limited by the buildings of the church, but right now the religious sacrality, you can see it everywhere. You could see it in the basement, you could see it in the trenches, you could see it it's any place where the priest could provide the religious support to a person. This religion sacrality, it came to the public sphere, and this step, this entrance of religious sacrality towards the civilian also sacrality is also the sign of the transformation processes. I will also allow myself to say a few more things. I would like to add one more line of the transformational processes would be forming the new type of religious attitude of different communities. Earlier, we used to have the confessions. We knew that there were different confessions in there. We have got the Muslims, we have got the Orthodox, we have got the Greek Catholics, the Roman Catholics. However, after the 2022, we have got a new phenomenon happening. The religiousness that is going out of the confession. Then you've got all the Orthodox, the Muslims, the Jews, the Christianites, etc. They are stating that they are the carriers of the societal religiousness. So we have got this civil religiousness that is based on freedom, on responsibility, on dignity, on morality. And this is really important. This is an important transformational phenomenon because for the survival of the nation, for the formation of the civil society, this process was essential. And therefore, the next step, transformational step, became that religion started to be the essential part of the civil processes. Therefore, those processes that are happening for all actors, the state actors, and here we've got the ideological aspects, the political aspects, and in particular civil aspects. Religion became really important factor of those aspects, both political, ideological, the societal, the civil ones. I also cannot avoid saying one more aspect, so I will just touch upon it, that all of those trends that I have just noted, they have touched upon all confessions at the same time. We can see that the leaders of such transformations in Ukraine after 2022 were Ukrainian Greek Catholics, Ukrainian Protestants, first of all, and of course the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. They have managed to shape the new form of theological, new form of responsible theology that allow them to provide the particular responses to those challenges. At the same time, the Orthodox Church that has been under the Moscow Patriarchy, they were not able to provide the response that the society was waiting for. And in this church, let's be honest, through those 4 years, we had seen the changes, the notable changes. We can also relate them with those transformational processes that all other religious organizations are going through. However, those changes are, kind of halfway through. They are not the ones that cannot go back. They basically show us that they are not irreversible, and they show the problems that are there, and we need to help them in their own transformations. At the same time, we have got new dilemmas that are staying in front of us. We cannot avoid them. I would like to say that this transformation of religious rhetorics, the one that I'm trying to talk about, it also has got its own challenges. In particular, how we can preserve this line between the religious freedom and the rights of certain religious organizations on their own identity with the national security. How simultaneously we can keep the line of preserving morality, responsibility of a certain religious organization and the demands of the society that are staying for this religious organization. In particular, of course, we're talking about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in terms of condemning the aggression, to show some clear position in the moral sense, first of all, to give the response as in front of God, what is happening, to say that black is black. And this demand, this obligation still stands up there in front of the church, however, not to move towards the restrictions to the church, or make those restrictions institutional, not propaganda, not political. And there is this difference between those restrictions and I think that this is the most burning challenge that is that we are facing right now. And I do believe that it is the calling of our meeting today to discuss those challenges that are staying in front of our society. Therefore, I would like to come to a short conclusion stating that religious sphere of Ukraine has really changed. It has changed drastically. I do believe that those changes, first of all, in publicity, in formation of the national narrative, in the active formation of the national civil religiousness that is the factor of survival for us right now. However, the religious transformations, they also have led to certain challenges that we need to encounter. And this is the threat of turning religion into the tool of serving the ideology. And then it's also the threat of ideology formation, or political ideology. Of course, the Ukrainian mentality, we have got in our heritage the tolerance, good sense, and the ability to win. And I believe that we will be able to find in Ukraine the balance that will allow us to simultaneously preserve the principles of law, principles of freedom, at the same time for religious organizations, not only religious, but other participants of the process, to having the responsible position, and also to protect themselves in this aggression of the genocidal order. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Hennady. Thank you. Of course, there are some comments, some issues, some questions. I suggest that we will place them at the end of the panel. As you could see, we got it at the end of this panel in the agenda. Hence, it is my pleasure to give the floor to Tatiana Kalnichenko, the PhD in philosophy, the co-creator of the Public Association Dialogue in Action. Good afternoon. I would like to ask for the presentation. Please show it. Just a little bit of the visual issues so that you will not have some additional questions regarding the peculiarities and indicators and figures. As I've noted, I've been working in religion. However, during the last few years, I'm also working as a mediator for interreligious groups, and maybe I will continue some topics that has been raised by Hennady, maybe not agree with some of those, with the role of the religious association starting from 2022 and starting from 2013 and even before that. So really short regarding the data that will be presented in here. This is the collection of the materials that we have analyzed during the last 3 years. We also had the new high quality questionnaire conducted and survey conducted in summer this year from different regions, from different confessions, so that they could talk about their own changes, what are the priority spheres. So you will have really short conclusions in here. I will be happy to present you it in detail if you wish. Oh, okay. So why the religious sectors are important? And we have conducted, first of all, this survey in order to show the secular foundations, and it is also our role to show the same level between the religious organizations and secular organizations. Right now, when we're feeling certain challenges, and also with regard to humanitarian issues, so with the figuring out the identity and cultural practices, the religious factors are also a part from the perspective of our team. However, not all religious aspects they believe that it is their obligation. Therefore, this triangle between the church, people, and the state, sometimes the church doesn't understand where it is. First of all, we're talking about the moral leadership and the moral codes that Hennady has noted. It could look a little bit differently, because not always would we hear the definition, the moral appraisal. It is really nice to have the announcement of the Interreligious Association of Ukraine with regard to the latest corruption scandals as well. However, when we talk about the dialogue with the secular organizations, unfortunately, it doesn't happen always. And also, sometimes when we see right now, when we are providing psychological support and the mental health support, as religious leaders, they're working with the concept of moral trauma. And as I would like to remind you, when we're talking about the moral trauma, it is not only about the actions of the aggressor, but also the internal affairs that happen in the church, within the church, also within the state, within the armed forces, when people do not understand why is it happening, and they also receive additional traumatization. But one more challenge that is related to the work with those organizations. There are secular functions, but the spiritual assistance, it is not there. Sometimes the psychologists are also talking that, taking care of the soul is not actually their functions. And this is also one of the things that relate to mental health and really important. When we talk about the narratives and spreading them out, they influence different civil groups, and they can be different. And it also relates to the internal unity and the advocacy on the everyday level, on this cooperation with the with the local authorities, also the communities, but also with the public diplomacy. when we have talked about the conference that has happened recently. Here on this slide, you can see in more details how the change has been there with the role of churches. I would be happy to share this presentation with you, of course. It is also important, apart from providing all social functions, the religious organizations have got their own peculiarity in those territories that are under occupation or really close to the front line. The secular funds, they have got limitations. Religious organizations, sometimes on the individual level, sometimes on the organizational level, they stay in those places where no one stays. They're providing the services when someone is afraid to provide them. This is the peculiarity that we need to underline, and it is not always happening. And then sometimes it also leads to the conflicts with the secular charitable organizations that are refusing to do some of the things, even though they do provide the highest standards according to the international law. And then at the end, you can also see the religious communities towards this civil society in terms of LGBT plus, etc. Sometimes it is limited. Some of the churches are not talking about it, and therefore those narratives that could sound, really powerful when they're set together, they do not sound, because some of the organizations are not ready to do that. And also, one thing that is not discussed widely, those specialists that are providing religious services on the individual level, they are burning out because they are working in really harsh conditions. Some people do believe that they should be doing it until the end, but they are people, they're human beings. They also need insurance, medical services, healthcare. They need attention. And in many organizations, unfortunately, it is absent until right now. I also would like to focus on several trends and demands that were talked about in all different groups, where we have got separate confessions and also mixed ones. Public theology, so-called voice of the church, or the creation of the moral codes, the understanding of what is going on. Unfortunately, it is limited. Of course, we have got some announcement towards the so-called Russian world or Russian peace, but sometimes we do not have the movements in the theological perspective, the theology of the peace. When we're talking about peace, we do know how we do not want, but we do not know how do we want it to look like. And then we have got this difference that sometimes we are closing the some things related to the crisis, but some existential levels, they are not elaborated enough. We also talked about the mission of the church, because if earlier we talked about that we need to talk about the providing this mission, right now we need to think where we are towards the state, towards the society. What should be the partnership between the state and the church? Because no one really imagines how it should be in practice, how it should be implemented in practice. And when we are talking about, we need to understand, where am I the citizen? Where am I the religious person? When we talk about the mobilization, for instance, and service in the armed forces, where we do not want to be like Russia, and how we want to be. Also, we would like to talk about a so-called prophetic voice of church. It is also one of the problematic issues. Apart from public activity, we're talking about advocacy. This is raised on the national level and the local level. Then when we have got several associations of different churches, we have got the Christian Council, we have got an association of the Protestant churches. Also the things that are related to the presidency of Donald Trump, the lobbying of interests, etc. We understand that international advocacy, it can be wider, it can be more. And we can go through both secular advocacy, but also through religious channels. Unfortunately, this is a burning issue. And so the advocacy that we are doing for the secular organizations, we need to provide the information that religious organizations do have the right for support and they can do this activity. This component that we are also working on, the peace building and social unity, we are talking about this within the Ukrainian society. We've got so many topics for which we haven't got the clear answers, and we can go there through ideology or we can go through traditional way. Right now, we are trying to work on the ideological path in this regard. However, if we are talking about even about the level of advocacy on the international events, we haven't got the same view on peace. And when our international colleagues are asking, well, everything is fine, well, the war is over, how do you see when it's over? How would you like the peace to look like? It's not about how the international partners view it, but it's about how we view it. We've got some indicators in there. However, unfortunately, the capacity is limited. The capacity is not there. At this point, we've got many internal dilemmas that we need to work on. I'm not even talking about the women leadership that is not related to female priests, but also to the understanding of different roles. However, I think we will leave it for the post-war period. And also the work with the trauma, the mental health, we're just actively working. But what we are less working on would be the inclusive memorialization, so that we are not talking only about heroes, not to build different stratas of the population where the untouchable people on whom we should be talking about. The memory should be inclusive. It should preserve different aspects, and it should provide the knowledge for us, an experience for us, so that we do not repeat the mistakes that has been done. And this is also a part of the national work in terms of the secular organization, also with the representatives of the state, different representatives. And also when we are talking about the court and justice, how we should talk about collaborators, what do we do when we have finally how we would work on our internal issues, because unfortunately our system sometimes it just may not take this amount of cases. As I've got a few minutes left, I would like also to note about the practice of dialogue in action. I'm thankful to all people who trust us, who talk to us about their internal issues, and also the committee. We have noted it several times, the CEC, when we to provide the space for the discussion of theology of peace, theology of war, and the elaboration of the concept how the peace should look like, not only within the internal Ukrainian society, but also with the involvement of international partners. And also the things that our participants of the survey has noted, they talked about the need for change. So it is not about the short-term period, but just thinking a few years ahead, how the support should look like, the strategic dimension, and also the social unity. How should the paraphy should live after the liturgy, how they should cooperate with the state, and also the short recommendations, if you can see it on the screen right now. This is a change, as Hennady noted, to the proactive activity. This is not only the reaction, because the religious organizations can actually provide the tone, and of course also the peace building working on life resilience in Ukraine, the dialogue that can be integrated in different projects and shouldn't be something peculiar or standing aside. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Tutana. Dear colleagues, dear participants, it is time right now, and we have got it in the agenda, to start talking about the state policy and state activities. However, I would like to come back to a certain degree and just say a few additional phrases with regard to the model of relations between religious organizations and the state, the partnership, and the relations between the churches. That has been commented by international experts. We know about that. And those that have noted that Ukraine is demonstrating this model that maybe hasn't got any analogs in Europe. And of course, we do understand to a certain degree why it has happened, because by overcoming the Soviet occupation heritage, there was an understanding and the that led to these to those conflicts that happened also within the Orthodox Church. The state and the church probably understood that we need to work on that. This model has been built. It has been actually functioning effectively for quite a long period of time. And if we take on the rating in between religious freedom, Ukraine has been listed in there with good indicators, and sometimes even better than some of the European states. For quite a long period of time, we did have those good indicators of not interference of the state to the religious affairs. And this law that has been looking at the religious organizations, of course, it doesn't mean that we didn't have any issues in this regard, that we didn't have the situation that we had to react to. However, if we compare to the problems and the threats that have appeared in front of the religious organizations starting from 2014, and also that revealed even more than that, starting from February 2022, we couldn't even compare them to what has been happening before. And therefore, this interaction between the state, the church, and the society, I think I need to underline, as I am personally linked to the communication with the religious organizations and responsible in some regard to that, I need to know that if we talk about the policy of the state, we have got the right to say that until the end of 2022, December 2022, we didn't feel any policy of the state in this regard. And we need to explain that. Well, of course, we have got that it exists on the legislative level. Maybe for some part of the society, those radical steps, those could be taken with the criticism. However, also for the churches couldn't probably see those steps properly. However, it seems to me that the final reason for forming this clear position after the long time of waiting, of hopes, after several events of changing the hierarchy of the Orthodox Church, in Ukraine, and also waiting for the announcement of breaking all of the links with the aggressor state. And all of those hopes, they have been broken, particularly after the events in May related to the meeting of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine that once again have repeated the same position when they said that they condemned the aggression, but they did not talk about breaking the links with the Orthodox Church of Russia. When they didn't clearly show it as the issue being in discussion. And it seems that probably those circumstances, they have led to some radicalization of the community moods. And those 50% of people who are talking that we need to cancel this church and to lead to its liquidation. Starting from 2022, we have got this big amount of local resolutions that were really categorical, that they have talked about the prohibition of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine when they have decided to stop the agreements on rental, and also the number of legal act drafts that have been created in this period of time, which we do remember, and some of them were named already. Also, we have got one that has been called this way, so-called the liquidation legal act draft. Particularly, those circumstances have have made the state to look differently at the shaping of this policy that basically has been shaped in 2022 or after 2022. The transformation of the religious sphere into the sphere where the tools are used, or the methods or the mechanisms, turning it into the system of security. Of course, in this view, we have to analyze it differently. We have to view it differently. And given all of the things, and of course, the position of the Russian Orthodox Church that has started talking about the aggression even before the 2014, and about this Russian world or Russian peace, so-called, and it's a dominance that they are viewing. And when they make it sacred, when they serve with these words, not only the reaction of the aggressive activity, but also everything that they do towards the Ukrainian Orthodox Church as well. So unfortunately, we didn't have any messages that would tell us about the opposite. And therefore, on the 1st of December 2022, we had the meeting of the Security Council in Ukraine, and then by the directive of the President of Ukraine, this decision or this resolution of the state microphone, it has been put into action. After this resolution, well, to the legal act that has been done there, we all have linked the State Service for Ethnical Affairs and the Freedom of Conscience also joined this activity. And we had to elaborate what events should be done there and turn this decision of the State Service for Security. We know that the State Service for Ethnical Affairs is the central national executive authority. The State Service appear to be this central body according to this resolution, and we work under the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine directly. Also, we have looked at the departments within the local administrations. They also had to be under the State Service. Then we also have, under this resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, we have created the intersectional working group on the recommendations towards a certain task related to the religious activity in Ukraine. According to the activity and according to the order of the State Service, we are all talking about this December of 2022. There were many different acts that were related to the expertise also with the religious view. This is all related to the pact of legal acts. And as a result, we have made the conclusion regarding the management of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Then also we have this draft of the law of Ukraine, number 8371. Maybe someone have forgotten this number already, on amending several laws of Ukraine on the activity of religious organization in Ukraine, dated 19 January 2023. It seems that we started working in December, but then it has come to the final view in January. This has been given to the Verkhovna Rada. What do we need to note with regard to this law draft that we do not even start talking about right now? We do believe that this law draft did have a simple and effective mechanism of doing those tasks, and then proving or not proving the fact of affiliation of religious organizations, Ukrainian religious organizations, with the religious organizations on the territory of the aggressor state. We do believe that they did show us a good path on solving those issues. However, after certain discussions, and it has been ongoing for quite a long period of time, it lasted until October 2023. This law draft 8371, it has been voted. It has been voted in the first reading, but then we had lots of amendments that were going towards it, around 1,000, quite essential ones. We have been in constant communication with the People's Deputies of Ukraine, but in the long run, in August 2024, we did receive the law draft on the protection of the Constitution which not only by its name, but also by its content, was drastically different from what we had. Well, if we look at the content, it was absolutely different from what we have started with. This legal act that we have elaborated in the State Service for Ethnical Affairs and the Freedom of Conscience. And probably I need to note that as a result of this activity, we had the reflection in the law that are really complicated in terms of the implementation. When on practice, we deal with the implementation of those clauses. And starting from August 2024, the State Service, as a part of the implementation of this law, is working on drafting a number of different legal acts, also those related to the research. I beg your pardon, I guess I need to show the slides. Can you kindly help me to show that our slides? It seems it's slide number 8. Yes, thank you, thank you. Here is the law of Ukraine, 3894, dated 20th of August 2024. According to the resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, it has adopted the order of providing individual adoption towards the communication with foreign religious organizations that has been forbidden in Ukraine. Then we had the new resolution of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine in May 2025, by which we've got the order towards corresponding the facts and providing the facts that religious organization is using the propaganda of the ideology of the Russian world. I think it is one of the most important orders in there. The next goes towards the research on the affiliation of religious organization with those foreign organizations that are forbidden in Ukraine. And also last one in July 2025 regarding the providing the real estate and giving them for free to the religious organizations. It's quite a complicated act. Our legal experts had to work on it for quite a long period of time because it is quite a complicated issue and it was hard to provide it. But so we have been the elaborators of this law, and so I can say that in the nearest future we will be awaiting for the one more order when we will amend this last order was for real estate. So it's the dynamics of what has been happening in terms of the legal basis of the State Service for Ethnical Affairs and other events that we have been implementing starting from August 2024, starting from this law. This basic law of Ukraine has appeared, the fundamental one. And then of course, for the State Service for Ethnical Policy, we had the time for practical steps in terms of the implementation basing on these laws and legislative acts, particularly with regard to research on affiliation of religious organizations with those which central offices are located in the state who is an aggressor. And I would like to give the floor to Victoria Vojnolovic. I would kindly ask to show my presentation on the screen. And now we will talk about practical steps in terms of the affiliation of those organizations. As it has been noted, the law has amended our profile law on the freedom of conscience. You can see the Article 5, the determinants of the affiliation that has been noted in the law, with regard to which we were supposed to conduct research, and we are conducting research. Victor has noted already the order of conducting the order on research regarding affiliation that allowed us to have a step-by-step guidelines towards what we need to do. And we conduct it in terms of the hierarchy of the religious organization. We will have either the order about the affiliation or non-affiliation. We can also say that we did have two researches conducted. The first one was regard to Kiev Metropolis of Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and we will talk about the results later. Also, the Courts Monastery of Moscovian Patriarchy, and also one more research that it will be finished soon. With regard to Kiev Metropolis of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, we have conducted a research of the charter of this organization, and we've seen that Kiev Metropolis as the center, it appeared to be a part of the Russian church. It has got all opportunities to have decision making, and also the head of the metropolis, he is a part of the charter of the Russian Orthodox Church. What was the complexity? As you noted, we have started talking about the meeting of Ukrainian Orthodox Church when they started that they are independent, that they do not need to take any additional steps. However, the state did have some questions, in mind. Where is the truth? What is the essence? And we have started analyzing the thumos that have been given by the patriarch, and we have trying to figure out how it reflects the independency. How did they give the rights to those or other religious associations? And it appears the thumos that, for instance, have been given to Albania, to Poland, to Romania, to those Orthodox churches. In Poland, it was in 1948. In Czechoslovakia, it was in 50s. They did have the clear signs that those churches are absolutely independent, that they have got their own synod, that they can provide elections, that the activities of the members of their church are not under any other religious organization. They do not need to implement any decisions taken by the Moscow organizations. At the same time, the charter that has been given to Ukrainian, it clearly said that any head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, he have to be a part of the synod, of the Sacral Synod of Russia. So therefore, we've got those signs of dependency. And then we have adopted the prescriptions towards the Kiev metropolis that they had to take in order to become independent. They had to proclaim that they are coming out of the Russian Orthodox Church, that they had to take their monasteries out of the authorities under Russia. They had to talk also about the annexation of Russian churches, of Ukrainian churches, I beg your pardon, those that are related, those that are situated on the occupied territories, and that they are coming out of the synod as well. As you can see, all of the prescriptions, all of the recommendations that we have given, they are quite easy to implement. If the religious organization needed more time than 30 days that we had listed in there, we had in the law the opportunity to lengthen this period for 60 days more. So if it took more time, it needed more time, then for instance, when they needed consensus, when they needed to have a big meeting, or even they had an opportunity to, for instance, appeal for certain parts of the decision if they do not agree with it. At the same time, we need to note that the Kiev metropolis didn't use any of the opportunities, and after 1 month, they have sent us a reply that this research is the interruption of the activity of the church, that it is that it's not legal, that it's all fiction, that it doesn't have any relation towards the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and it cannot be implemented. We do believe that this position of the Kiev metropolis is manipulations, because this is not something where it is not related to the mystical body of the church. It is just a breaking up with the organization that is trying to that is conducting genocide over Ukraine. At the same time, we had to provide that we have got, like, all people who have got relevant information and can provide evidence, they do have the right to take an initiative and provide the information to the state service for ethnical affairs, and they can implement those prescriptions at any time. At the same time, the prescription doesn't demand from them to contact with Moscow, because it's an internal decision and they can take those decisions within. We do not demand the change of the language of service. We do not demand the change of the calendar. And we can say that the fact that they are saying that it's fiction, they haven't provided any evidence towards it. So as they didn't agree to work towards the recommendations, then it led to some legal results, legal outcomes. The Kiev metropolis has been defined as an affiliated organization, and then therefore we have went with a lawsuit to court. The second research that we have conducted was the Koretz Monastery of Moscovian Patriarchy. It was the same path that we have taken. We have looked at the charter, all of the documents that they had. We have figured out that they are actually included in the structure of the Russian Orthodox Church. Their decisions, they have to follow any of the decisions of Russian Church. They got an obligation to do that. Also, the same goes to the abbot, as it has to be assigned by Moscow. What is the complexity? in the beginning, it was saying the Koretz monastery is a part of the structure. It is a part of the sacral synod. So in general, in their documents, it is clearly stated that they are part of the Russian Orthodox Church. And we know that according to the Article 3 of the law on the protection of constitutional order, the activity of the Russian Orthodox Church on the territory of Ukraine is forbidden, as they couldn't do anything with regard to the prescriptions. Well, what can they do? They'll start their own liquidation, as they can't hold activity according on the territory of Ukraine according to the legislation. Therefore, we had to apply another legislative norms. They are viewed by the Article 4 of the law of Ukraine on the protection of the constitutional order, and also the Article 16 of our law, sectoral law. If you have if you are violating the legislation, if the religious organization is violating the legislation, then this religious organization should stop its activity. And we started the lawsuit in this regard. We understand that the courts are taking quite a long period of time, and I give the word to my colleague, Victoria Zayats, who will tell us more about that. Thank you, Victoria. We have conducted and finished 2 researches, first on the Kievan metropoly. We've got it published on the website of the State Service. It also has been sent by the Ukrainian Postal Service and also by email to the address of Metropoly. However, how they implement the order, they had to inform about it officially. However, we haven't received the information regarding the execution of the prescription, and therefore, after it has been the term has finished, then we have started. Then we have sent the lawsuit. The state on the Administrative Code of Ukraine. It provides information how the courts view how they view the termination of the legal entities in Ukraine through liquidation. In terms of terms, it is 1 month. However, the judges appear to be non-ready to have the court decisions like that, as the metropoly started 7 legal cases on the research itself, on the policy. They started their appeals, the form of the prescription, and the prescription itself that has been given to Metropoly. The judges were not ready once again to take the decision. And some of the judges, they even had to come out with the announcement of self-recursal. They also decided to take in the information that the rights of each and every person who is visiting this church, that they are violated, despite the fact that this they are the legal organization. It is a legal entity that acts according to the legislation of Ukraine, and they have to be responsible for their own activity. This lawsuit cannot influence the rights of people in this regard. However, until today, they haven't even started looking at the essence of the case, despite the fact that for 4 months they have been looking at this. And the documents that are included into the case have got this huge amount of documents that are included in that, because they are trying to take additional time. They are providing appeals on each and every decision, on each and every document that has been sent to them. Apart from including the parishioners, they are trying to block the decisions to be taken by the court. So we are going in terms of the legislation with all of the terms that are listed in the legislation of Ukraine. After the lawsuit, we also sent the application in which we asked the court to arrest the real estate owned by the monastery and the. However, they didn't do it. Unfortunately, until the courts are continuing, the religious organization can take all of the real estate that it has, so they can sell it, they can give it to somebody, they can do anything they want about it. With regard to the courts monastery, we also had the lawsuit basing on the clause 8 of the law on the freedom of conscience, as their main office is located in the aggressor state, and the activity of the Russian Orthodox Church is forbidden on the territory of Ukraine. So we right now look at the situation where the Kiev metropolis and the Koretz monastery, while acting on the territory of Ukraine, they do not want to follow the Ukrainian legislation, and also by inviting legal experts, by putting lots of money in that. They also manipulate by the rights of the parishioners. They pay lots of money for the lawyers in order to not to follow the laws of Ukraine, and they are trying to find the protection in courts. We on our side are also by implementing the laws of Ukraine and basing on the act that has been created, we will continue to stand for those lawsuits until the last point, in order to have the activity of the religious organization that is not following the legislation of Ukraine would be terminated. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we have finished the first part of the first panel. We are waiting. Right now, we've got the coffee break that is waiting for us. Maybe you've got some questions, or we can ask and talk about the questions a little bit later. Then thank you to the panel.